Today we have my good friend Lauren Fulton on the podcast. She is a full-time teacher, author, business coach, and stay-at-home mom. She is passionate about helping other moms and teacher authors create thriving businesses without wearing themselves out by providing step-by-step guidance through her podcast, The Rebranded Teacher, and her membership, Rebranded Teacher Academy. So we do a deep dive into digital downloads. If you don't know what that is, it's basically creating something that someone pays for and then just downloads straight from the internet. It can be teacher resources, but it could also be birthday invitations, fonts, clip art. We talk about it all, how to get started, what types of streams of income can come from digital downloads, because it can really branch out into so many things. We are covering it all in this episode. I can't wait. Let's dive in. Welcome back, everyone, to the Course Creation Mama podcast. I have my friend Lauren here, and she is going to tell us all about digital downloads as a stream of income. So welcome, Lauren. I am really excited to talk about this.
I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So it's kind of hard nowadays. I feel like my job description just keeps getting longer, but in a nutshell, I create online resources for teachers and for teacher business owners, either to help them out in the classroom or to help them grow a business online. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell.
Awesome. So you specifically make resources for teachers, but do you ever help people that are not making teacher specific resources, or is it just like curriculum and worksheets and things like that?
There's a mixture. I would say that the vast majority of people who are in my membership or in my audience are people who are teachers or are moms, one of the two. So it's either like a homeschool mom or a mom who's a stay-at-home mom who like helps her kids with school after they get home. Or some of them are teachers, but they don't create teacher-specific resources. So they may have started creating teacher-specific resources, and then they began to branch out into birthday party decor or things like that to sell on Etsy. So there's a mixture in there, but primarily I would say it's teachers and moms.
Yeah, I've seen that too. And I feel like there are so many possibilities now with digital downloads. I mean, it can really expand to all kinds of markets, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that you started selling your resources online before you started teaching others. So can you kind of talk us through that journey of how you went from teacher seller to now teacher mentor?
Yeah. So I had been selling my resources, like math resources, just, math printables, things like that, like digital downloads, on a website called Teachers Pay Teachers for several years. And I got to the point where I had replaced my teaching salary and I was like, I'm going to stay at home and do it full time. And I kind of had a little bit of time on my hands, a little bit extra time on my hands. So I started to dabble and just kind of creating some YouTube videos for people, like to help people who wanted to make more money. And this is, I mean, I think maybe a little bit of naivete on my end, but I was like, people need help. Like, I obviously know what I'm doing. Like, that was kind of the mindset that I was in at the time. I was young, and I was like, I'll just, make some YouTube videos and like, just see where it goes. And, so I did that for a couple of months and then I got pregnant and I was like, I don't want to do anything. Like, I don't want to do anything. But then mid-pregnancy, the pandemic hit, and the money that I was making online, it was like God just humbling me, for a moment. It was like slashed. I'm talking in March, it was like, it went from, oh, I'm going to have a 5-figure month to I'm making 20% of what I was making before. Like, it was just completely devastated. And I thought, after I come out of this, of course, I'm pregnant, I'm going to have this baby soon. There wasn't really a whole lot that I could do right then other than damage control in my own business. And I certainly wasn't in the mindset of helping other people in that moment, because I just needed to figure things out for myself. But I thought, if like when I make this out on the other side, like when all of this kind of settles, when the dust settles and I figure all of this out for myself, I don't want to be in this position again. I don't want to be in a position where I'm having to like figure out how am I going to pay the baby doctor? Like, how am I going to pay these hospital bills? how am I going to, like, I remember literally like standing in line at IKEA, getting ready to pay for a $75 crib, and like going in my bank account and like double checking that, like, yes, I've got all, if I do this, like I'm going to have all the money that I need to pay for everything else that I've got to buy. And
Mhm.
I thought, like, I just don't want to be here again. Um, so as soon as baby was born, I started looking for other ways. Like, how can I start to diversify my income streams? Because by that point, that digital downloads, everything, it had stabilized again. But I was like, who knows what's next, you know? So I started looking for ways to diversify. And that was one of the first things that I did, was to start back with helping teacher business owners grow that area of their business. So that's kind of how I got started with that. Moving into just kind of creating more YouTube videos, then creating a course, and then just kind of spiraled from there.
Yeah, and I'm sure this happened to you too. Like when you start something and you're successful at it, people start asking questions.
Yeah.
I kind of went through the same thing as you. Like I started selling my digital downloads online, but then I started getting people asking me questions about how I was selling them, not about my resources. And I got way more questions about how I was selling them online, not about the resources themselves. So when you
Mhm.
get successful at something, you're going to have people asking you. And then that's a great way to then jump to another stream of income. Because I am like you, I think multiple streams of income are so important, especially in the online business world, because things can change so quickly and you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket for sure.
You
So
don't.
yeah, I definitely understand that. Okay, so you're helping teachers now with creating and selling resources. So let's say that someone is listening and they are interested. Maybe they're a teacher or they're a mom and they feel like they have the skills to create any type of digital download. How would they get started? What would be like the first step?
I think the first step would be to identify your target audience, your niche, and knowing where's going to be the best place to put those digital downloads. Because if we're talking about something like birthday party decor, we're talking about Etsy. If we're talking about creating fonts, there are so many different places that you can put fonts. If you're gifted with creating clip art or something like that, then you could list them on multiple sites as well. You could list them on Etsy, you could list them on Teachers Pay Teachers, you could list them in a lot of different places. If we're talking about digital downloads for recipes and things like that, then maybe you want to start looking at having your own blog, or there's another avenue other than maybe Etsy, right? Or Teachers Pay Teachers. So for sure, Teachers Pay Teachers and Etsy are the two that most people in my niche and in my world are utilizing. But I would say start with just figuring out what niche and what market do you want to be in, and then start to look for places where you can hopefully um, list those items on an established marketplace. That is probably the fastest way to go ahead and get some revenue. So for example, there's a lady in my church that I was talking to not too long ago, and she's a mom. She's never been a teacher, at least not to my knowledge. She's a mom. She homeschools her kids, and she is like very passionate about like church history, right? So like Reformation Day, things like that. And she started to create printable resources for her kids so that they could learn about like Christian history. And she wasn't really finding fun things about Reformation, right? Or finding really interesting, like you got this really intricate, detailed, maybe coloring picture that you found from like 1982 of Martin Luther, like nailing the theses on the wall, right? Like, you've got this
Not a lot of
kind of
options.
abstract thing. Yeah. That isn't really going to work for your 4-year-old.
Right.
So she started just creating, these resources for her kids. And then other moms would ask, like, oh, I would love to have that. Like, can you share that with me? And so she started listing them on Etsy. And then I think there was another website, excuse me, that because she knew that her target audience were Christian families, she found like a website that she could list on, and I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it was for Christian downloads and Christian resources. And it was kind of more geared towards that. And so she started listing them on there and then just sharing the link, on her Facebook page. And she would get some organic traffic, but then she would also get, some traffic from people, that she knew, friends and family. So that's a really great place to start, is just to start with identify, then figure out, is there a marketplace that I could put this on where I can get some organic traffic, people who don't know me, who are potentially looking for the same type of product. And then also, once you've listed it there, because you haven't had to create your own website, you haven't had to start your blog, you haven't had to do all of that yet, because they're already listed, you can do something like what she did. Post it to your Facebook page and say, hey, if anyone's looking for some really cool birthday party decor, if anyone's looking for some really neat printables or worksheets or something to keep your toddler busy, you can find these right here. I've made these. And your friends and family would much rather purchase from you than purchase from somewhere else. And sometimes that can help you gain traction on that marketplace where you're listed. And you're able to do that without having to make a big monetary or time commitment outside of just creating the product itself.
Yeah, I feel like digital downloads are probably one of the easiest side hustles or streams of income to get into, because like you said, you don't need your own website. You can use these other marketplaces that already have SEO built up, meaning when people search for a certain thing on Google, like Christian coloring sheets, then these websites are going to be number one because they have built up that SEO. They have that good reputation. And so if you use Etsy or Teachers Pay Teachers, people are already going to that site. You already have traffic. They take care of customer service a lot of times. They take care of sales tax, which is amazing.
Yes, yes.
Selling on your own website. So a lot of the things that, you don't want to deal with in the beginning because you're not making any money yet, these established websites can really help you get ahead in the game. So I think that's important. So figure out your niche, kind of what kind of product are you going to sell, and then that will determine where you should put them online. And you can put them in multiple places, right?
Oh yeah, you can put them in many places. And even if, I mentioned earlier, like recipes, you might want to have your own blog for or whatever. Just because a marketplace isn't necessarily designed for the particular niche that you're in, like Etsy, they have printable downloads for loan officers to like reach out to their clients. Like they have super niche stuff that most people are not necessarily going to Etsy for, but you can at least drive traffic there yourself. So let's say that you are somebody who's really gifted in creating, like I've got an acquaintance of mine, a childhood friend that I kind of grew up with, and she creates all of these like incredible gluten-free, dairy-free, allergen-free, like you kind of look at it and wonder what on earth is it made of, but it's all healthy and it looks incredible.
Yeah.
And you want the recipe,
Mm-hmm.
but she's not at a place where she could have a cookbook yet. Well, that's a perfect opportunity to do like, 5 gluten-free breads, put them together, stick them on Etsy so that you're not having to worry about all of that stuff just yet. You're not having to do the website. And then you can go ahead and sell to friends and family. It can go ahead and be a really simple download where you can make a few dollars and without having to make the bread and give it to them.
And it's an easier sell because digital downloads are going to be that lower price point. So people are willing to pay $3, $5 versus if you're going to start with maybe like a bigger ticket item, like a course, you have to do a lot more marketing for that kind of sell,
Right.
Okay. So people pick a niche, they pick the kind of the marketplace or multiple marketplaces, but let's talk about actually creating them. What kind of programs should they use? What if they feel like they want to go into this type of stream of income, but they're not creative? What would you say to that?
Yeah. I'm a really big fan of PowerPoint. I know you are as well. I think most creators in our world are using PowerPoint. It's able to grow with you. And for the most part, wherever you go, like even if you start off as a beginner, most people know basics of PowerPoint. Or can figure it out pretty quickly. There's so many resources available. If you can't, there's YouTube. You can YouTube anything about PowerPoint and there's a video about it. So that makes it really helpful and really accessible. It's also at a very low price point. I think it's maybe like $10 a month or something. It's really inexpensive software. but then also it can grow with you so that, you're not going to be limited later on like you might with other softwares. Canva is another really popular one. I know that one gets, with its terms of use, it can be a little bit murky or muddy. To me, the terms of use are extremely clear, but Canva itself, their customer support, when people have reached out for clarity, that's where it's gotten a little bit murky. But I do know a lot of people use Canva. I've used Canva for some of my digital downloads, not that I sell them individually, but like for my courses or things like that are part of a course. But a lot of people use Canva or Google Slides or PowerPoint. PowerPoint is always going to be the one that I recommend the most. And it's just a really great place to start. And it's not as difficult as you might think. I think a lot of people think like, oh, I'm going to write this recipe. I've got to try to find a way to make it look beautiful and appealing and super cute, or I'm going to, create this little printable for my kids and I've got to find a way to make it perfect. And it doesn't have to be that way in the beginning. Just start with something really simple and then maybe work up to where you want to be from there.
Yeah, PowerPoint is definitely where it's at for me. But if you're not in like the teacher seller space or creating teacher resources, you're probably like, what? PowerPoint?
Yeah, exactly.
Presentation. But you can really, because it's a presentation tool, that just made me think of The Office. Um, you can put anything anywhere on the slide, which is very cool. And then Canva, I feel like Canva is more for maybe Etsy stuff like birthday decor and that kind of thing, or even like planners.
Yeah.
And I was even thinking Procreate, like if you want to do clip art, I know a lot of people use Procreate on their iPad. If you're doing fonts, there's specific apps for fonts. So it really just depends on what type of resource you want to make, what type of digital download. But there are lots of free ones available or really inexpensive ones. And then for people who are saying, I'm not creative, it's like you said, it doesn't have to be super fancy at first. It's really the content that for the most part that people are looking for, unless you're specifically making decor. And then you should probably have some type of skill in that if that's the route that you want to go in. Like if you're going to make fonts, you should be able to create fonts. That's something that I can do. And I don't think I can learn that.
No, same here. And it's exactly what you said. It's the content. So like if we go back to the recipe analogy, like people are really not interested if they're purchasing 5 recipes from you. They're not really interested in how beautiful the stock photos are or how well placed all of the text is. They just want it to be readable and they want a good final result. And later on you can work towards the cookbook, right? And later on you can work towards making it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think that's important. Like it needs to be clear and simple and readable, not super fancy. That's what people want. So that's important.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say maybe we have some people who are already creating and selling digital downloads. Where do you see that expanding to, like for your students in your membership and even for yourself? Kind of what other streams of income could that lead to?
Oh gosh, it's really limitless. And I think, one of the things about, and I know, a lot of moms listen to your podcast and are part of your audience. And I think one of the things about moms and teachers in general, but mom teachers especially, they're just really creative. Like, moms can like take random items out of the refrigerator and make a gourmet meal out of it. Like they can do absolutely anything. And the possibilities are endless, but just a few really basic ones that I can think of off the top of my head and that I've done myself are to take those resources that you create and compile them into a membership. Where they can pay for monthly access or yearly access to get all of the items that you have available on demand. Or maybe, they have that on demand, but with some additional videos, right, to go along with them. Or, but taking those exact same things, compiling them into a membership, taking them and maybe compiling them into a course. For what I do in the teaching world, it'd be really easy to write a curriculum. You're selling it piece by piece. You're selling lessons, you're selling notes, you're selling activities. individually, but then to compile them into something of a course for homeschool parents to be able to have a place where there are video lessons there and they can just download and print the individual items, or for teachers to be able to go and, show their students the video lessons or download the activity that, corresponds with a given topic. So there are so many different avenues for this, but courses and memberships are probably the biggest two.
Yeah, I see that a lot. And even like, let's say you're not a teacher and you want to sell on Etsy, maybe sell decor, and you get really good at that, people are going to start asking you about that. You can create a course about how to be successful on Etsy. So it really can lead into a lot of other streams of income, which means all your eggs aren't in one basket. So you're not relying on this one thing, which is always good.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I know that you have a lot of streams of income. You're doing all the things. Every time I talk to you, you're doing something new, which is great. So, okay, can you kind of estimate how many streams of income that you have? And what do you think is a good, realistic goal for someone to set for streams of income?
Yeah, I think 2 or 3 is
Yeah.
really practical for most people. I'm an Enneagram 6. So if anyone listening knows anything about the Enneagram, I'm strongly motivated by fear. And when I get stressed, I go to an Enneagram 3, which is like an overproductive, overachiever kind of personality. So those two things have worked well for me, but they've also worked against me. So I have about 8 different streams of income. I would say 4 of those are in partnership with another person, which makes it a lot more manageable. I have, 2 memberships, a course, a couple of conferences, YouTube, and, selling on my website and selling on Teachers Pay Teachers, selling on marketplaces. And I feel like there's another one in there, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. So it's probably not making me very much money.
Coaching, do you do coaching at all?
Oh, coaching. Yep. Coaching. Yep.
And
Yeah.
the cool thing is all of those are related, right? Like they all started from
Yeah.
this core business and then you expanded using kind of what you already had, which is cool.
Yeah.
So that really goes to show the possibilities are endless. And I didn't even think about coaching, but that's another thing that these digital downloads could lead to, coaching people how you create the downloads or how you're successful with selling them, or even how to use the downloads that you create, like you said, as far as teacher resources. Maybe you could coach other teachers about how to use your specific curriculum or do professional development. So I say all that to say there's a lot of different options for you. Even if you start with this one thing, you can definitely diversify, which is so important. Okay.
Absolutely.
Wow. So this was really, really exciting. So I was in my podcast with asking people this question. What is one act of generosity that you have done or you plan to do? And it could be with your business or personal, with your family.
Gosh, I think one of the things that's been really nice is that, I'm I'm a faithful giver to my church. And that's the one place where I've been able to give generously and to not worry about where, I've always been a 10 percenter, like 10% of my income always goes to my church. But there were times where giving 10% was really, really difficult, in my life, especially like a single teacher, you've got just that one tiny little income stream, you're still paying off student loans, all that kind of stuff. But I think also when things come up, or things come up with friends, I hate to really list specifics because I want to be like mindful of people's privacy, but I also, I don't know, like I feel like I'm tooting my own horn, but like there have been opportunities for me to be generous with my friends. This person's going through a hard time. Let's go have a girls' day, make a big spa day out of it, and it's not something that I have to worry about being generous with, or, there's something that comes up at church and I'm able to be like, hey, just get with me, like I can help out with that. And I'm not talking about, I'm not a millionaire. Like I'm not talking about doing anything big, but it's given me the freedom to be able to do that. But also it's given me the freedom of being able to be generous with my time. And I feel like that's even more important than being able to be generous with money. Because if somebody needs something, there was a point in time, not long after I was able to leave, teaching, where my sister got really ill and she had just had a new baby, and, she's walking around with drains out of her side, and it was really awful. But I was able to just say like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go up there. Like I'll be up there for a while, I'm going to go back and forth. And I was able to be generous with my time. And I'm so, so grateful that I have the opportunity to do those things and to be generous with my time with my family as much as that allows, So, yeah, I think that those would be like the really big things, just the day to day, like the everyday, the mundane, I say mundane, that's not really mundane,
Yeah, yeah,
but it's like the everyday small things that used to be a massive sacrifice. And
yeah.
now, because of how, um, I've worked to set up my business, and because of honestly just how incredible God has been to me, it doesn't feel like the massive sacrifice anymore, which I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, man, I love that. I feel like that's the why behind a lot of my listeners and wanting to start a business. First of all, to help people, but also to have that financial freedom and time freedom, because really time is our most valuable asset. It's the only thing we can't get more of. So being generous with your time, even if you feel like right now you don't have the money to give to be generous, you can still give of your time, and setting up your business in the right way, automating things, setting up systems so that you really can spend your time doing what matters most, hanging out with your family, but also helping people. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Awesome, Lauren. Well, thank you so much. So tell our listeners where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me on YouTube or on my podcast. So on YouTube, I'm Lauren Fulton. There are lots of new, if you're interested in selling resources online, there's like some playlists for selling on TPT for new beginners. And then I also have the podcast, The Rebranded Teacher, as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And yeah, her podcast is amazing. If you are a teacher looking to get started selling your resources, definitely check that out.
Yeah. And Lindsay's been on a couple of times talking about courses and I think product creation too. I think episode 2. I
Back
think you
in the
were
day.
episode 2. Yeah, back in the day. Yeah.
I love it. Full circle now, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you.